Okay, let me try to give you a very quick overview of the New Relic platform. I like to always start with this map view, this NOC, Network Operations Center, where we can see all the different hosts that are running, and we can quickly see certain metrics that are important, but we can also see applications that are running under these hosts. There's all kinds of different ways to filter so we can find what we need. But we can also take a different look where we look at the world from the applications point of view and check out which hosts or containers these applications are running on. So I could go right to the application this way, but first I want to show you service maps, which is more of an application type of view, but from a transactional point of view, if you will, in that it will show us how applications correlate. So let's pick this application here, a web portal application. I can see that a browser comes into this application, and this application has connections to these different applications. Now, what's important to note is that I didn't have to do anything. All of this just happened. Having the agents running in the different applications and the different hosts self-discovered all of these relationships. And you can customize this, but I just want to go fast and show you the highlights. I'm going to go into this planned service application, and let's look at APM first of all, which is really where New Relic started. I can quickly see how this application is performing. I can find the time slot, the timeline that I'm looking at. Let's go to let's go ending now, 30 minutes, or let me just make a change so that it updates the screen. And from what you can see here is we can see how much time is being spent in MySQL, so I can toggle this stuff on or off. I can see that this is a PHP application. I would get JVM if it was Java. And there's different ways we can see this information, and some of these are very significant in that sometimes averages may not tell you the real story, and percentiles is a more relevant type of information. But let's keep going with what we got here. We got the optics score, so we can see what the level of frustration, toleration, or satisfaction is by application or browser, and we can set those optics scores. There are ways that New Relic can tell us what they should be based on history. Throughput, see how many requests we're getting, so that's important in troubleshooting. But all of this is application performance monitoring, and we can see different transactions, how long they're taking, what errors. Also, we can see the hosts this application is running on, and the main facts, we can have all kinds of filters here. But also we can also look at this criteria and then compare the host. So it's an interesting toggling. And let's see. Let me show you an example here. For example, let's say I want to go with a 24-hour span and see how this application has been behaving. I see here that we have a spike. So let's just drill down and see how we would troubleshoot such issue. Now notice, for example, that these are deployment markers. This is ways you can implement this that tells you when something may have changed. So every time you make a change, you can call this API that tells us, okay, there's a change, which is very significant because obviously until we make this other deployment down here, there's an issue with this application. So let's look at the transactions that make up this application, and here we can filter by different criteria, but let's just stay with most time consuming. So I see that the get plans is the one that's taking the longest. I can drill down into get plans, and I can see, I can start understanding that, you know, there's a lot of SQL issues here going on, and apparently there was a deployment and then they changed, and if it's MySQL other, that could be a stored procedure, but that alleviated the issue a little bit, but not enough. And here we collect the slowest traces of the slowest transactions. I'm gonna drill into this slow one here to get more information, and we see the breakdown of this transaction, the different parts. I can also get information as to the call stack, so I can see what method may have taken the longer time, and everything is pointing to the database here. So finally, if I go into the database query, I can see, you know, if I had more time, I'd show you how this is not an effective SQL, and that's why the slowness occurred. So let's change to, let's look at other applications so I can tell give other highlights. Let's look at this proxy, where I know it has an interesting use case, and I'm going to use this one as a segue to jump into infrastructure, and I'll show you how. So here I can see all the different hosts, as I said before, and I can separate the load. I can see here this spike is happening in this host. So let's go into this this instance, this host. So I'm going to look at the host. What I'm doing now is I'm jumping from one product, which is APM, into infrastructure. And in infrastructure, we collect all kinds of statistics and metrics. But again, I want to concentrate on the highlight, on specifically this point in time. And one thing to note is here I'm looking at the hosts. And once again, there's all kinds of filtering available that that I can use. But this, they call it the railroad view, shows me that events, things that happened in to this host, this specific host. And what is interesting, anything blue seems like it's something happened. I'm going to click on this guy, the bluer one. You can see that here we caused a warning. We have some alerts in place, which I'll cover later, but we have a critical condition here. And it ended here. So let me click here, and it highlights this whole period in time. And here I have a story of what's happened here. I see that a user connected. I see the package was installed, and we see the warnings that I spoke about. The package then is removed, and the person gets off the system. But let's see here. If I can click in here, and it tells me exactly what are the new values and old values, which may have caused our problem. Because if we're slowing down the infrastructure, the application will suffer as well. But you saw how I navigated from one product to the other, from one view to the other, and it helped me find out the issue. We can do other things in today's world. Lots of things are more containerized. So for example, let's say down here I have all these different hosts and what have you. I'm gonna unclick the application just to see everything, not just that one application. And here I see all the processes. But let's say we're interested in processes that are running under a container. So I'm gonna filter the process, and I'm gonna see how can I, what do I have available to filter here. And the one I'm interested in is contained, and in contained, the value I want is, let's see, my displays is not good enough. I'm gonna go with the true here. That's what I just did. So here I can see all the different processes that are contained, and moreover, I can, for example, group, instead of by processes, I could group by container image name. So I can see how different images are performing. So one last thing about infrastructure, which I think is almost like a highlight, is like, let's say you had to apply a package, and you have hundreds of hosts. So you may, let's say the package has to do with SSL. I can filter that, and it shows me all the different the different packages there. And let's say this is the one that I'm trying to that I want to apply, and here I can tell all the different hosts that I need to touch for this release of that package. So it's a great inventory lookup of where I may need to make changes. And we have integrations with other with cloud providers. There's a lot here, but once again, I'm just touching on the highlights. Let's go to browser. Every web application is broken up into client and server. So we've been talking about the server side. With the browser, we collect all kinds of information about the browsers, which is really inserting some JavaScript into the source of the HTML. We can do that automatically or copy paste, but we have visibility into single page applications. We have all kinds of information. We also have the optics which we can use to for alerts, for example. Let's see. We want to look at page views, so I can make some points. The idea here is that I see pages. I can see the pages that are consuming the most, whether it's the application, all kinds of filtering ways. What I'm going to look at is session traces. In session traces, I see that I have these different pages that I could analyze. And let's look at one of them just so that, again, I can make some points. If I look at this, we are collecting all these metrics that are browser type of metrics as to what is it that's taking this page so long to load. So we see CSS, we see JavaScript, we see images, we may see videos. So with this, we could analyze a page, make and customize it, change the order of events. That can really improve how our applications are behaving. We have all kinds of intelligence. All of these are pages that are created by default by the platform. So we have lots of information. We also have we can filter by geography. We can see where are people coming from, and this is real user monitoring. For time's sake, I'm gonna leave mobile out, but it's somewhat similar. We have an SDK that you can install into your iOS or Android application, and we can find crash analysis and performance metrics. It's very comprehensive. You can even find out what carriers people are using. I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but I am talking about it. But one thing I wanted to distinguish browsers and mobile from is synthetics, which is more of a robotic type of way of analyzing certain flows. And so you may not have people coming in from San Francisco, say, but you could have a robot that it checks something from San Francisco. And by something, I mean that we have different kinds of synthetics. We can simply ping, simply look at a page, have a script something that logs in, goes to a certain page, gets some data, sees if the data it gets validated, and we can also have a very robust API checker. And here you would go ahead, you would choose what you want, but typically you would select where the monitor lives, and then and how often you want this monitor to run, and whether you want to be notified if something doesn't work or not. But that is high-level synthetics, and there's a lot you can do with that. With all this information is being pumped up to the cloud, to our instance in the cloud, and to New Relic. It's all stored in a big data type of database. But before I go into that, which we can get insights from insights, let me just touch upon alerts. With alerts, we have you can build all kinds of criterias, policies that when you want to be alerted, whether something is a warning or or if it's more severe, so I can create an alert policy. We have different types of intelligence, so that because different people want to do this in different ways, but I'm just breezing through it. You need to create a condition, and so we can create a condition on all of these different places where we collect metrics, where we collect events. One that looks like different from that I haven't spoken about is new Relic query language, and we'll see that when we get into Insight, but basically it's an SQL-like way of analyzing events, and we can check that. We can look at a certain metric, and I'm going to go into selecting which applications, and then we define the criteria which will send me an alert or create a warning. I'm going to go back because one that I think is really interesting to look at is that sometimes you could have in here look at some make it more dynamic. You could when you create those thresholds, instead of hold on, I didn't select the one I want. I wanted application metric. Next, select entries. Here we go. So what I was saying was that we can, the system can tell us if we set a certain value. There's certain, let's say if I do, okay, here we go. So I can say, okay, what if I set this value? How many alerts? This tells me if I set the value at that level, this is the number of alerts that I'm going to be getting. So I can study based on what has happened so far, how this application behaves, and when is it that it makes sense for me to get alerted. And once you decide on the policy, then you select a notification panel channel, which can be many different channels, email, SMS, but you can also integrate with other methodologies for alerts, or you can either call an API and do what you need to do. So that's it for our alerts. Let's go into Insights. Insights, all this data is being pumped up to Insights. So it's a huge database where we can do Narqual queries, New Relic query language. I can do select count from, let's say, and here's all the different metrics that I'm collecting. And so, for example, from page view, and I'm going to hit run, and here I get those numbers, the numbers. Let's make this a little bit more interesting. So it's very iterative. I could facet, which is a group by. Let's do it by country code, and hit run again. And now I see this, and maybe I want to see this as a pie chart. Maybe I want to see it as a dashboard. But here, what I would do is I could save this query. I could make it a favorite. All the queries are saved by default. But I can also save this to a dashboard, and I can create dashboards that are very persona oriented, meaning that different people see different information about their data. So in here, let's see, if I go to the dashboards, and I just created one. So it's this guy here. So I go in here, and right now I have a simple widget, but we can add widgets. We can add widgets from the actual views that we already have existed. So we can make them very dynamic. But again, for time's sake, I'm gonna stop there. But I'm going to leave you with a completed dashboard. Let me go to my cheat sheet of links, and I'm looking for my industry dashboards, and what this is trying to convey is what I alluded to before, that that you can have different types of views of your data, different dashboards that different stakeholders may look at. Maybe an executive wants to see very high level numbers. They analyze the errors and they see how much money was compromised because of perhaps the checkout not working. So you can analyze, you can understand this data not just from a performance point of view, but also from a business point of view, because one very important point is that you can inject your own user data into New Relic and then build correlations between business data and performance data. In this example, we have a funnel that shows how many people came to your homepage. 42% logged in, 31% browse items, and only 15% went to purchase. So there's you have a very good understanding of how your business is running, and what the key phrase that I haven't even used yet. This is all real time. Thank you for your attention.